Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Mo Ray, and this is The Other Side. Sorry, a little late start today, a few technical issues, but I will be getting started here in just a moment. If you hear any background noise, forgive me. It seems like the lighting has changed. Did you move those lights? No? I look like I belong on Uncle Ben's box. I don't know. But, okay. All right. I just feel. Am I black enough for you? You know? All right. We're going to get going here shortly, but I just, I don't know. It just seems different.
That's just today, man. There's just something in the air.
Oh, definitely
We had a couple glitches. I went and cut some commercials today down at Taylor Kia.
Well, Fred, I'm doing a show, my friend.
Oh,
all right, yeah.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay.
We need a lot of air light in here.
Yes, we do. And we need a big booth to speed things up, I believe. But anyway, welcome. All right, that looks better. Okay. And here we go. Okay, so this is obviously we're doing live radio. And Tim, yeah, you're right. You're calling. You're calling it right. But let's get going to what we're talking about. There's so much going on in the news, and this not only election season, this appears to be book season. Day before yesterday, we had the revelation of the Michael Cohen book, but I think the big news is, and I'm going to let ABC World News Tonight tell the story, with David Muir opens up yesterday's program talking about the Woodward book. That's the big story, where the President of the United States sat down for 16 or 17 hours with Bob Woodward of Watergate fame, and he thought he'd be able to convey his side of things, but pretty much what he did was very damning. He admitted that he knew how dangerous COVID-19 was, while even as he was doing the happy talk and being the cheerleader. And I got a feeling the hardcore Trump people, this won't affect their vote whatsoever. But if you're marginal, I'd like to hear from you. Does this just change your mind at all? You can give us a call at 330-595-1600. That will get you through. 595-1600. Do these revelations about the president's knowledge of what was going on, just how bad things were or could get, and then not moving on it? It seems that he was more, he claims that he didn't want to panic people, but it seems that he was a lot more interested in keeping his robust economy going, the stock market looking good, and him getting reelected. And he was willing to roll the dice on the lives of Americans. But like I said, we'll discuss this more on the other side of this story. This was the opening of last night's ABC World News with David Muir.
Bombshell recordings, President Trump giving journalist Bob Woodward 18 interviews. And during those interviews, the president admits to downplaying the coronavirus in the U.S. Early on, telling Woodward he knew the virus was deadlier than the flu, saying privately, "It goes through the air, that's how it's passed." The president telling Woodward in early February that the virus would be deadlier than the flu, but weeks later, his words in public telling the American people that the virus was like the flu. It was in March the president talks about the toll with Woodward, not just on older Americans, but revealing it's, quote, young people too, plenty of young people. During the interviews, President Trump admits to intentionally misleading the American public because he didn't want to cause a panic. Tonight, how the president is now explaining those comments, how different they were in public versus private, and his opponent, Joe Biden's response too. ABC's chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl leading us off.
It's all on tape. President Trump bluntly acknowledging to Bob Woodward he fully understood the deadly threat posed by coronavirus and that he was misleading the American public about it. In his book, Rage, Woodward writes that National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien told President Trump on January 28th that coronavirus, quote, will be the biggest national security threat you face in your presidency. 10 days later, Woodward interviewed the president, and they spoke about the virus. Here's an excerpt from the audio tape obtained by CNN.
You just breathe the air. That's how it's passed. And so that's a very tricky one. That's a very delicate one. It's also more deadly than your strenuous flus. This is more deadly. This is 5 per this is 5% versus 1% and less than 1%. So this is deadly stuff.
But just 3 weeks after that, the president told the American people coronavirus is like the flu, directly contradicting what he told Woodward.
This is a flu. This is like a flu. Within a couple of days, it's going to be down to close to zero. That's a pretty good job we've done.
You may ask about the coronavirus, which is, very well under control in our country.
In another interview in March, the president candidly acknowledged to Woodward he wasn't being upfront with the American people.
Now it's turning out it's not just old people, Bob. Just today and yesterday, some startling facts came out. It's not just older
exactly.
young people, to plenty of young people.
It's clear just from what's on the public record that you went through a pivot on this to, oh my God, the gravity is almost inexplicable and unexplainable.
Well, I think, Bob, really, to be honest with you,
Sure, I want you to.
I wanted to always play it down. I still like playing it down.
Yes,
because I don't want to create a panic.
And the very next week, the president said this.
America will again and soon be open for business, very soon, a lot sooner than 3 or 4 months that somebody was suggesting. A lot sooner. We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself.
The president today was asked directly if he was misleading the public.
Well, there we go. And here's the thing. We got a little late start today, so I'm going to cut some of these clips short. But does it bother you that the President of the United States had this knowledge and then continued to lie about it, continued to downplay it? It bothers me. We all, if you're watching this program, you probably agree with me. We all know that this man likes to lie. He lies like most of us breathe. But when you're talking about people's lives, when he's saying he didn't want to cause a panic, I can't imagine anything more panic-inducing than watching your loved one die and you can't even be with them. These deaths were happening even as his lies continued. Now, I think his rationale to say that, oh, well, I didn't want to get people upset. No, in the case of a potentially fatal pandemic, I think you need to get people maybe not panicked, but certainly aware of what we're dealing with, the danger that we're dealing with. And maybe some of these moves, some of the shutdowns, some of the PPE protocols and all that could have taken place a lot sooner and saved a lot of lives. I think it's undeniable. The fact that he decided that he would continue to downplay it so that he could continue to have a great stock market to brag about. I think that was his priority. I don't think the American people were. Those who say that Donald Trump's first concern is Donald Trump, I think they are correct, and they are proven right by the president's actions regarding this very serious situation. Interestingly enough, there's yet another angle to this now. Lindsey Graham is in a very close race in South Carolina, and believe it or not, even though they're mad at the president for giving this interview, or they're mad at Bob Woodward for doing what a reporter does, that is to ask the hard questions. But let's be clear, these aren't secret recordings. The president knew he was being recorded as these interviews were being conducted. So there's no gotcha there. He said these things into a mic knowingly. So if he's fine with his excuse, I guess he'll have to live with that. But now we're at the point where 190,000 Americans are not living with COVID-19. COVID-19 has taken them away. And as I said, I think it just begs the question, how many of these deaths could have been prevented if the president had been more honest sooner? There's also another angle on this, though. There are people who are upset with Bob Woodward. He knew this because he conducted the interviews, so he had this information and he sat on it for months as people were dying and getting sick in this country. So is he also culpable? Or, as I like to look at it, do you think if Bob Woodward had come forward that he would have been believed, even though the recordings were there and everything? Or would, the Trump, what I call Cult 45, these people the president can say anything. I've said it before. He joked about it, but I think there are some members of his supporters that would vote for him even if he shot someone on Fifth Avenue. And I think even if Woodward had released these tapes earlier, I still think they would have stood by him. Somebody said, well, now that this is out there, what are his supporters going to do? And I said, they're going to keep supporting him. That's what they're going to do, because nothing breaks them. He's convinced them that as bad as he is, he's a hell of a lot better than Joe Biden and those evil Democrats. Well, I don't know about that. I think there are some of us who are looking for a little more normalcy. We're looking for a steady hand in the middle of this pandemic, and we're looking for honesty. I don't need happy talk. I need a president who's leveling with me. And I think that's why this president also, if you notice, Dr. Fauci's pretty much disappeared. He's still out there doing his own thing, but he's not appearing with the president at any of his briefings. President found a yes man that'll go along with what he wants. There's also another scandal brewing. There's another whistleblower situation where apparently this president he's not interested in the facts of the matter. I'm just changing subject slightly, but when it comes to domestic terrorists, he's a lot more interested in painting Antifa as the big threat. And I'm not saying they're not, but they're more vandals than they are violent. Where you have a situation, you do have the one person who was shot by an Antifa person, and one death is one too many. And of course, I played that video the other day, and of course that guy was eventually killed by federal authorities. But the thing is, while he sounds the alarm for Antifa, there are also the Proud Boys, the Boogaloo Boys. These guys are out there doing violence, and yet this whistleblower says that he was instructed not to report on that as much as to report on the problems on the left. We need a president. We need a government that's honest with us. If there's a threat out there, it doesn't matter if the threat's on your side. You need to report it. If there's a threat on the left, I would expect Joe Biden to speak out against it, which he has, by the way, in the case of the people who have infiltrated Black Lives Matter protests and done violent acts. But here's the twist I was telling you about. Now instead of just saying, wow, the president said some pretty bad stuff, Tucker Carlson opened last night by blaming this whole thing on Lindsey Graham.
Bob Woodward. Why in the world would he do that? Well, tonight, from a source who knows the answer to that mystery, Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. It was Lindsey Graham who helped convince Donald Trump to talk to Bob Woodward. Lindsey Graham brokered that meeting. Lindsey Graham even sat in on the first interview between Bob Woodward and the president. How'd that turn out? Now, remember, Lindsey Graham is supposed to be a Republican, so why would he do something like that? You'd have to ask him. But keep in mind that Lindsey Graham has passionately opposed, virtually every major policy initiative that Donald Trump articulated when he first ran, from ending illegal immigration to pulling back from pointless wars to maintaining law and order at home. Lindsey Graham was against all of that more than many Democrats. So maybe you already know the answer.
I find this remarkable because, as far as I'm concerned, Lindsey Graham's soul died when his friend John McCain passed away. He's become a very different person. This is a senator who once called the president a kook, who once said he was a racist, who once said all kinds of things about him. Now he's his golfing buddy. I also find it interesting that Fox News, rather than, as I said, call out the president on withholding this information from the American people, focuses on who set up the interview with Bob Woodward in the first place. No, that's not the problem, Mr. Carlson. The problem is that once that interview started, the president said some things that are very damning, and I think that's what you should be focusing on instead of trying to find the bad guy that caused the president's trouble. And in fact, who caused the president's trouble? Well, the president need only look in the mirror. The words out of his own mouth caused his current situation. These were rare moments of truth from a president who would prefer to, as I said, engage in happy talk and magical thinking, even as people are dying around him. By the way, speaking of people who engage in magical thinking, let's take a look at Kayleigh McEnany, who I refer to as BS Barbie, when she's asked if the president did deceive the American people.
Trump intentionally mislead the American people about the threat of COVID, a pandemic that has now cost the lives of nearly 200,000 Americans?
Absolutely not. This president, at a time when you're facing insurmountable challenges, it's important to express confidence. It's important to express calm.
Always play it down. Is playing it down, is that expressing calm? It seems dishonest. It seems.
Can you
like
read the rest of the quote?
That's how much they put in there.
Oh, you excluded the last part.
We'll play the full thing on 60 Minutes.
Please do.
Do you deny
Please
that
do
you
explain.
misled the American
Please,
people
of
about
course
the
I
threat of
deny
this
that.
pandemic?
And he makes clear that he doesn't want to see chaos, by the way, is the second part of the quote, which you failed to read. The president, just days after having this discussion with Bob Woodward, said this from this podium. On March 30th, he said, "I do want them to stay calm. We are doing a great job. If you look at the individual statements, they're all true. Stay calm. It will go away, but it's important to stay calm." So this president does what leaders do, good leaders. It's stay calm and resolute at a time when you face an insurmountable challenge. That's what this president has
It will not appear that the president lied to the American public about the threat posed by COVID.
The president has never lied to the American public on COVID. The president was expressing calm, and his actions reflect that. On January 6th, the CDC issued a Wuhan travel notice before any confirmed U.S. cases, among a number of other actions. And I'd refer you to Dr. Fauci, who said that this president has an impressive response. I can't imagine under any circumstance that anyone could be doing anything more. That is the record of this president.
You quoted Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci is also apparently on the record saying of President Trump that his attention span is like a minus number and his sole purpose is to get reelected. That's according to veteran journalist Bob Woodward. I think the bottom line here is that the president, by his own admission in private on the record, acknowledged the depth of this crisis and yet told the American people something very different. How is that at its core not an abject betrayal of the public trust?
The president has always been clear-eyed with the American people. He was always clear-eyed about the lives we could lose. Again, from this podium, he acknowledged that this was serious back in March, that 100,000, 200,000 lives could be lost. And with regard to Dr. Fauci, you're referring to a quote he allegedly told Bob Woodward, and I can give you quotes that we can all play on loop and video of him saying that this response was impressive, and he can't imagine anyone under any circumstance doing anything better. Dr. Fauci saying this, "I can just tell you the president, the first and only time I went and said, you need to do mitigation strongly, the response was, yes, we will do it. The second time I went with Dr. Birx to the president and said 15 days to slow the spread are not enough. We need to go to 30 days. Obviously, there were a lot of people who had problems with that because of potential secondary effects. Nonetheless, the president went with the health recommendations." So there's a long litany of praise from Dr. Fauci, and you're referencing something he allegedly told Bob Woodward.
It's on tape. It's on tape, Kayleigh.
Well, I'm reading to you what Dr. Fauci has said very publicly for all to see, and we can all play those video clips. I can get them in your inbox.
When he downplayed the virus initially, and he knew that how contagious and deadly it was, I don't understand how that can.
The president never downplayed the virus. Once again, the president expressed calm. The president was serious about this when Democrats were pursuing.
Well, there you go. And I'm going to stop saying there you go so much. I am always analyzing myself. But Kayleigh is obviously trying to protect her president. But you just heard his own words. He did say he was downplaying, and then she's standing there before the press corps saying that he never downplayed it. So you judge for yourself. Let's remember that this press secretary, in her first appearance before the press, she said she would never lie to you. Well, I've heard a whole lot of lies from her. I've stated before, I told a guy last night on Facebook that I don't mind listening to a beautiful woman lie to me, but the older I get, the less I believe them. Sometimes I'm just looking at them, but the words coming out of that mouth are not true. And this woman, I give her credit. She's very intelligent, but I think her credibility is lost. She's even worse than Sarah Sanders, you know, she has her notebook full of answers to any possible question. But I love that guy. It wasn't a gotcha, but, you know, she said, so you're alleging the president, you're alleging that Bob Woodward said something. And the guy says, no, it's on tape. I don't know how she wasn't aware that this was out there on tape, but she made herself look like a fool. No, these are allegations. We can play it for you if you'd like, Press Secretary. The President of the United States admitted that he misled the American people. But let's get the other side of it, and we'll start with, this is Joe Biden, and this is his response to finding out the president misled the nation.
On the day that we hit 190,000 dead in the United States because of COVID-19, we just learned from the Washington Post columnist Bob Woodward that the President of the United States has admitted on tape in February he knew about COVID-19 that had passed through the air. He knew how deadly it was. It was much more deadly than the flu. He knew and purposely played it down. Worse, he lied to the American people. He knowingly and willingly lied about the threat it posed to the country for months. He had the information. He knew how dangerous it was. And while this deadly disease ripped through our nation, he failed to do his job on purpose. It was a life and death betrayal of the American people. Experts say that if he had acted just 1 week sooner, 36,000 people would have been saved. If he acted 2 weeks sooner, back in March, 54,000 lives would have been spared in March and April alone. You know, his failure has not only cost lives, it sent our economy in a tailspin. It cost millions more in American livelihoods. This is a recession created by Donald Trump's negligence, and he is unfit for this job as a consequence of it. How many schools aren't open right now? How many kids are starting the new school year the same way they ended the last one, at home? How many parents feel abandoned and overwhelmed? How many frontline workers are exhausted and pushed to their limits? And how many families are missing loved ones?
And those are good points. And that's Joe Biden. Excuse the video quality. I'm trying to find better sources for these things, but I think he brings up some very interesting points. And that if this had been handled differently, let's be clear. I've been saying since the beginning that the president has mishandled this. I think those early days where he was saying it would all go away, and as I've talked about before, remember when he was saying you'd all be sitting back in church by Easter? That was obviously a fantasy. He knew how bad it was, and it was bad and getting worse. But I think that is the problem. We have a president who has, well, at least some people, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but some people have diagnosed him with narcissistic personality disorder. And this is a little clip. It just says, does DJT have NPD?
Exhibit the following traits: an exaggerated sense of self-importance,
The one that matters is me.
a preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success,
I've been very successful. Everybody loves me.
power,
I have the right to do whatever I want as president.
brilliance,
Putin did call me a genius.
beauty, or ideal love.
And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Whatever you want. Grab them by the
The belief that they are special
I am the chosen one.
and should associate with only other high-status people.
This has been in particular a great friendship.
Those with NPD require excessive admiration,
It was the biggest standing ovation since Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl.
are interpersonally exploitative.
I love Mexican people. I've had thousands of Mexicans working for me.
They show contemptuous behaviors,
I don't know what I said.
have a sense of entitlement,
I'm really rich.
and lack empathy.
1,000 Americans are dying a day.
It is what it is.
So you tell me, do you think DJT has NPD?
I would answer yes. I think this is probably the most narcissistic president I've seen in my lifetime, narcissistic person I've seen in my lifetime. He never apologizes. He's always right. He doesn't listen to experts. And here we are, 190,000 deaths. The economy is in shambles. All kinds of things have happened. And it's because this president personalizes everything. Rather than accept the advice of experts, he just hears something that kind of tickles his fancy on Fox and Friends, and he goes with it. And I'm not making this up. You've seen where Fox and Friends will say something at maybe 7:10, and the president will tweet it almost word for word at 7:45. So you know, or you'll hear him repeat something that Sean Hannity said. I've said it many times. This president has some of the greatest minds in the world at his disposal, but he seems to get most of his information from state media, that is Fox News. It's a circular environment where, they're there to make him look good. He's taking information from them to make himself look good. He's even hired people from Fox News. Let's not delude ourselves. There is a symbiotic relationship going on here. So, and I know they like to say, oh, the media is so liberal and all that, but I've never seen a president, Republican or Democrat, have such a relationship with the media where we know that there's midnight phone calls between him and Sean Hannity. We know that these people they're in the tank for him 100%. And if you want to see worse, then flip over to Newsmax, which is to the right of Fox. If you want to see even worse than that, flip over to the president's favorite network at this time, OAN, One America Network, because, man, they make Fox look like a bunch of liberals. So this president doesn't want coverage. He wants praise. And the media is not there to praise him. The Founding Fathers put a free press, mentioned it specifically in the First Amendment because they wanted someone to hold the powerful accountable. And we have a president now who lashes out at the media, insults reporters, insults their whole organization, and tries to question them and quotes the words of dictators when he calls the free press in the United States the enemy of the people. Those are the words of a tyrant. Those aren't the words you expect to come from an American president. And, but once again, you got to ask yourself, why did this president who hates the media so much sit down for 16 or 17 hours with Bob Woodward, who made his reputation on bringing down a president named Richard Nixon, a president who in some way draws parallels can be made between that president and this one. But as I said, the difference was Richard Nixon had enough class that when he saw that impeachment was imminent, he resigned rather than put the country through the drama of a drawn-out impeachment. This president will fight till his last breath to hold on to his office. This president will probably, if he turns out to be called the loser on election night, I seriously doubt he will go quietly into the good night. He'll probably wait for the mail-in ballots to come in, which, by the way, makes sense. But we'll see what happens. I'm really concerned that our peaceful transition of power might be in danger this time, regardless who wins. I'm afraid some of the more radical people on the left might not like the outcome, and I'm definitely afraid of some of the more radical and usually armed people on the right and how they might react to a Trump loss. But we'll see what happens, won't we? This is the president talking about, let's see, where am I? Actually, this was an excellent thing from Business Insider, where they talk about the evolution of the GOP, how we've gone from a more civil time to the red meat politics of Donald Trump.
Is now in danger.
President Donald Trump delivered a dark warning at the 2020 Republican National Convention.
This election will decide whether we will defend the American way of life or whether we will allow a radical movement to completely dismantle and destroy it.
It was a familiar tone to the one he struck in 2016 when he declared that he was the only one who could keep the country in check.
I alone can fix it.
His ominous rhetoric has been a sharp departure from the Republican Party of the past. Let's take a look back.
There are no words to express the extraordinary strength and character of this breed of people we call American.
40 years ago, presidential candidate Ronald Reagan fueled his convention address with optimism about the country's future and shared a vision far greater than himself.
Trust me, government asks that we concentrate our hopes and dreams on one man, that we trust him to do what's best for us. Well, my view of government places trust not in one person or one party, but in those values that transcend persons and parties.
Since then, most Republican nominees have used what is often called the most important speech of a political career to convey similarly hopeful messages, with poetic language that could almost be set to music.
And I'll go from the hills to the hollows, from the cities to the suburbs, to the loneliest town on the quietest street, to take our message of hope and growth for every American, to every American.
When partisanship was getting worse, nominees called for unity.
And so tonight, I call on every American to rise above all that may divide us and to defend the unity of the nation for the honor of generations past and the sake of those to come.
And in the wake of the worst terrorist attack on American soil, President George W. Bush spoke of rising from the ashes.
3 days after September the 11th, I stood where Americans died, in the ruins of the Twin Towers. My fellow Americans, for as long as our country stands, people will look to the resurrection of New York City and they will say, here buildings fell, here a nation rose.
President Trump has abandoned tradition to focus on scapegoats.
We're fighting off this horrible thing that was delivered by China.
Divisions in the country.
How pathetic, they let him riot every night.
And personal attacks against his Democratic opponents.
Biden would be the worst of all of them. And if given the chance, he will be the destroyer of American greatness.
That compared to how candidates would often talk about the other party.
A word to Senator Obama and his supporters. We'll go at it. We'll go at it over the next 2 months. You know, that's the nature of this business. And there are big differences between us. But you have my respect and my admiration. Despite our differences, much more unites us than divides us. We are fellow Americans. And that's an association that means more to me than any other.
Even criticisms of incumbents have been expressed in the name of bettering the country.
I wish President Obama had succeeded because I want America to succeed.
But President Trump's convention speeches have been, well, fairly unconventional.
These phonies, you know, they want to end everything we've done.
And perhaps in a sign of how much he's changed the party, no former Republican presidents or nominees even spoke at the 2020 event. By stoking mistrust in the election's outcome.
We have to be very, very careful. And you have to watch. Every one of you have to watch. This is going to be one of the greatest scams, and it's common sense.
And by offering himself as the nation's savior, President Trump has embarked on another campaign like his last.
4 more years! 4 more years!
Now, if you want to really drive him crazy, you say 12 more years.
And many Americans fear that his words will actually be taken seriously.
And I know that's a pretty long segment. Once again, that's courtesy of Business Insider, but I think it just shows you the contrast between what the Republican Party has been in the past and the days where people were politically gracious, even if they lost, or even when they were talking about their opponent. And now we have a situation where this guy is terrible. And everybody who's not with him is the enemy, and they're trying to destroy this country. No. There's just a difference of opinion as to what country we want. There's always been that, but now things are more polarized than ever. And it seems that some people want a country based on fake patriotism and autonomy. That is, looking at this man, like you, as I pointed out, the Republican Party didn't even bother writing a platform this year. Basically, their platform is whatever Trump wants to do. The presidency has always been bigger than the man who holds the office, but this president seems not to acknowledge that. This president seems to think that it's all about him. As I said, he personalizes everything. When he's defeated in a court case, it's not just, well, better luck next time. It's that judge is a loser, or that so-called judge is a loser. He questions our very institutions. A president of the United States questioning our electoral system to the degree that this one does is dangerous. He greatly exaggerates voter fraud. It's almost non-existent in a country of 300 million people where probably, at best, 40 or 50% of us vote. The voter fraud is really very rare. And he's creating a lot of chaos. He's even got the Secretary of State of Ohio even told people don't vote twice. Oh, he might have been joshing his suggestion, the president, that you vote twice to test the system. You vote by mail, then you go vote in person. Well, that's pretty absurd. As I stated the other day, in some states, they can't even start counting those mail-in votes until election night. So if you sent your ballot in and then you decided you'd vote again, you're breaking the law, plain and simple. And if you're caught doing that, it's a pretty serious crime. There's a woman sitting in jail for 5 years in Texas right now because she didn't know that she was ineligible to vote in the state of Texas as a felon. So don't follow his advice on that. There's even Republicans saying that was a dumb thing for him to say. I would say hand walk your ballot in if you choose to do so. If you've got a mail-in ballot, I will be voting in person. I'm going early, and I will be wearing my mask and hopefully just in and out. But this is too serious, and the margins are going to be very slim in some of these states. You want to make sure your vote is counted. And for some of you, if you know, despite the pandemic, if you want to stand in line, if you've got the time to stand in line, I suggest you do it. Make sure that vote is handed over to the proper authorities so that vote is counted, because every single vote will matter in this election. And I still find it very troubling that this president continues, as I've stated earlier, to question the very systems that will either elect him or not elect him. It's like he's hedging his bets. If he loses, well, the system was rigged. If he wins, well, we beat that rigged system, didn't we? These are not the actions of a typical U.S. president. These are actions that are more common in third world countries. These are actions of demagoguery. And that's what we're dealing with Donald Trump. But let's go back real quick to the coronavirus situation. I want you to watch the graph. Somebody's already put a graph together where they pair the numbers on this pandemic with the statements of this administration. And watch how the United States comes up real fast from very low on the list to leading the world in this terrible disease.
It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear. Frankly, I think we're way ahead of ourselves.
We slowed the spread. We flattened the curve. We saved lives.
And this is a great success story.
At some point, that's going to sort of just disappear.
You still believe so? Disappear?
Well, I do. Yeah, sure.
We're opening up America again.
We've done too good a job.
Yeah, well, if 190,000 people dead is a good job, I'd hate to see a bad job, Mr. President. And as your own words point out, you knew as early as February, and actually you knew in January, but we know for sure, he admits to knowing as early as February how bad this was. But what was he doing? He was continuing to go out and have his rallies. He was continuing to go golfing and just pretend everything was fine. And in fact, he continues to have these rallies. He thought he was going to have a really Nevada Palooza, but the state of Nevada said no to planned rallies in Las Vegas and Reno. He was going to have them in airplane hangars, but still, we are still in the middle of a pandemic, even though if you listen to this president and some of his supporters, you would think that's all over. If you watch the way these people behave when they're gathered together, not wearing masks, no social distancing, you would think that the pandemic is a thing of the past. But we know better, don't we? The numbers have gone way down, but we still lead the world in coronavirus deaths. We still lead the world in infections. And as the greatest country in the world, I don't think that's how it should be, do you? How are these lesser countries doing better than us? For one thing, and one of my listeners brings it up, Tim brings it up, we still don't have a national plan. He left it to the states. He berated the states who were asking for PPE and ventilators instead of giving a strong federal response to this. When FDR was faced with the Great Depression, he didn't tell the states, hey, you're on your own. He had a national plan of action for the United States of America. And this administration has yet to produce one. What's up next? Let's see. Okay, here's the Lincoln Project, and they're telling the truth.
Who do you think is pulling Biden's strings? Is it former Obama
People
officials?
that you've never heard of, people that are in the dark shadows, people that...
What does that mean? That sounds like conspiracy theory. Dark shadows.
No,
What is that?
people that you haven't heard of. They're people that are on the streets. They're people that are controlling the streets. We had somebody get on a plane from a certain city this weekend, and in the plane it was almost completely loaded with thugs wearing these dark uniforms, black uniforms with gear and this and that. They're on a plane.
Where's this?
I'll tell you sometime, but it's under investigation right now.
Yeah, you remember that where he was talking about the Antifa guys in dark clothing on airplanes. And of course, if you're trying to be covert and sneak into an area to commit mayhem, the last thing you'd want to do, I would think, is everybody dress in a uniform. You'd want to blend in, wouldn't you? And he says he'll get back to her. Well, we'll see if Laura Ingraham ever gets a report back from the president on this, because as the subtitle said, this was largely made up stuff. We're coming up on the end of this program, but I want to point out something. This was August 3rd. The president was coming to Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Biden is leading in the polls in Pennsylvania, but Pennsylvania, the rural areas are still very much in play. And I bring this up only because I think it's important that you know that even though multiple polls have Joe Biden leading, in some cases by big margins, do not become complacent, because I want you to look at the enthusiasm that played out in Latrobe on August 3rd when the president made a visit.
Getting ready to leave Washington, D.C., this is a live look at Joint Base Andrews, where the president just stepped into Air Force One. His destination, Westmoreland County, and that is where hundreds of his supporters are eagerly waiting as the president returns to the Pittsburgh region for the first time this year. Good evening, and thanks for watching KDKA News at 6. I'm Stacy Smith. The president will speak to a crowd of supporters tonight at the Arnold Palmer Regional Airport in Latrobe. The visit is a key part of the president's campaign as he looks to win Pennsylvania for a second time. Nicole Ford spent the day talking with some of those in the crowds gathering for the rally. She joins us live now in Latrobe. And Nicole, his supporters are excited.
Stacy, they are excited. Air Force One expected to land at the airport behind me in about an hour from now. Now, we're about a half a mile from where this event is supposed to kick off. And let me tell you, it is a traffic nightmare out here. There is traffic down every direction, miles down Route 30, but it's not stopping the excitement of these supporters as they continue to honk to get to the event. Whether it was cars or people, the lines were long. Here to see President Trump. Some even showing up before the sun was up.
I'm retired, and this is kind of what I do for fun.
maybe we can get front row and maybe meet him or something, talk to him a little bit. I think it'd be really cool.
Thousands of people headed to the Arnold Palmer Regional Airport on Thursday in anticipation of President Trump's arrival in Latrobe.
This is my 13th rally. Like a groupie.
Edward Meade hit the road from Erie this morning to drive his camper here. This trip is short compared to most.
Cincinnati, Charleston, South Dakota.
While he's a seasoned veteran excited to hear the president speak, others are first-timers.
Just the experience, but I'm praying for a great turnout. I'm a Christian, and honestly, I'm just praying for a great turnout that he can see that people support him.
Despite the rain, the crowds came out.
Especially with the weather prediction, it means a lot that people are willing to just stand for hours and wait.
And they waited in ponchos with signs and flags until the doors officially opened at 4.
We're a Democrat county, we're a Democrat area, and I'm really glad he's coming so his supporters can come out and show him that we are also here.
Now you're taking a live look at the president boarding the plane to take off.
We'll leave that there. I just want to, as I said, I played that to show you this is no time to please ignore the polls. Stay active. If you're out there canvassing, if you're phone banking, if you're putting yard signs up, continue. This battle is not over, because his supporters are passionate, very passionate. So do not sell this short. I still believe that this is winnable. And I think that there are people in the middle and disaffected Republicans that can make a difference. And let's remember, a lot of people stayed home last time in the Hillary Clinton situation. It could be different this time. Passions are high on both sides, but right now I think the enthusiasm goes to the Trump crowd. And I think it's very imperative that you get out, as the woman said, turnout is everything in this. If you want to change things, get out and vote. Vote for Joe Biden, not for the current resident of the White House. If you are tired of the constant tweets, the name calling, and now we know the lies, even at the risk of American lives. So I want to thank Mario. Sorry about the late start today, but he patched everything up pretty well. We'll take a look at the poll numbers on Tuesday. Since we were running a little behind, I got to get out of here because, well, it's time for somebody else to take over. But I'm Mo Ray saying, as I always do, keep your eyes on the prize.